I start from the supposition that the world is topsy-turvy, that things are all wrong, that the wrong people are in jail and the wrong people are out of jail, that the wrong people are in power and the wrong people are out of power, that the wealth is distributed in this country and the world in such a way as not simply to require small reform, but to require a drastic reallocation of wealth. I start from the supposition that we don't have to say too much about this because all we have to do is think about the state of the world today and realize that things are all upside down. Now, if you don't think, if you just listen to TV and read scholarly things, you actually begin to think that things are not so bad, or that just little things are wrong. But you have to get a little detached and then come back and look at the world, and you are horrified. So we have to start from that supposition that things are really topsy-turvy. And our topic is topsy-turvy, civil disobedience. Now, as soon as you say the topic is civil disobedience, you're saying our problem is civil disobedience. That is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is the numbers of people all over the world who have obeyed the dictates of the leaders of their government and have gone to war. And millions have been killed because of this obedience. We recognize this for Nazi Germany. We know that the problem there was obedience, that the people obeyed Hitler. People obeyed. That was wrong. They should have challenged, and they should have resisted. And if we were only there, we would have showed them. Even in Stalin's Russia, we can understand that. People are obedient. All these herd-like people.
Shot over the world, and when we talk about terrorism, it is beyond ridiculous to talk about America fighting a war on terror. The American nation has been responsible for state-sponsored terrorism that has resulted in the death of probably 2 to 4 million people in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, countless people in Korea, countless people through proxy wars in Central and South America, 2 million perhaps in Iraq. I don't know how many thousands and thousands in Afghanistan, proxy wars in Pakistan, Yemen.
This is
all
we have
fought wars all over the world. Nobody has exterminated the lives and created more suffering than the United States of America. And this is the truth. And at some point, the American people are going to have to face up to this truth, because it does the American people no good whatsoever to continue to bury their heads in the sand.
Yes, Lee Kaplin, go ahead.
Okay, well, you know, he's absurd, and he's a professional propagandist. Look, he also throws in Pearl Harbor because he's trying to suggest that the United States was the villain in World War II. The United States defeated the Soviet Union in the Cold War, and they defeated the Nazis in World War II, who declared war on the United States. They also defeated the Japanese, who attacked them. As far as his saying that 9/11 was an inside job that the Americans did it themselves, he's ridiculous. He sounds like an idiot. And he talks about Vietnam, and he talks about these other wars, and he tries to claim that the United States is the warmonger. The fact is, the United States has been a cause for good in the world, has fought for freedom, and has freed all of Western Europe. All of Europe was freed by the United States. They've created protection for most of Asia, or at least Taiwan, and Japan relies on the United States today. So it's ridiculous. This guy was a human shield for the likes of Saddam Hussein, and who runs around with Hamas and supports terrorist groups overseas, tells everybody that the United States is the bad guy. No, the United States is the cause for good. And anybody who would watch this and swallow his garbage, his lies, his propaganda, this is on a par with Goebbels. And I'm sure he talks to audiences that are open to listening to his nonsense and his drivel. He might be successful with that. But I think most people in the United States would disagree with him.
Ken Keefe, let's move on here. President Assad, in a recent interview, raised a few questions. I'd like to get your answers to these questions if you can. He said, which forces are taking part regarding the Geneva II coming up? He said, what relation do these forces have with the Syrian people? Do these forces represent the Syrian people, or do they represent the states that invented them?
Well, there's absolutely no question. Once again, there is simply no moral standing for these people that are negotiating for a so-called settlement in Syria. Let's get, for instance, to the point about Bashar al-Assad agreeing to dismantle the chemical weapons program, which, by comparison to Israel or the United States, is so minuscule it's hardly to be considered even relevant. The United States of America has a stockpile of biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons, as does Israel. Why aren't Israel and the United States disarming and dismantling these stockpiles of weapons? Syria, for all the crimes it's accused of committing, isn't even in the same league as Israel or the United States in terms of using weapons of mass destruction, even if you were to blame every single death in the Syrian conflict on Bashar al-Assad, which is completely ridiculous. But even if we were, it wouldn't even come close to the amount of people who have been slaughtered and the lives that have been destroyed by both the United States and Israel and their British partner who helps legitimize every war crime they commit. The fact is that Syria teaches us one lesson that is extremely important, and this is a very, very critical point for people to understand. The propaganda has been incessant, it has been nonstop, and it has been telling the people of the world over and over and over again about the new Hitler, Bashar al-Assad. And it has been doing everything in its power to manipulate the people into yet another war. And you know, all it took to stop the British Parliament for voting for another bombing campaign, and even preventing the US Congress, which is the most sycophantic, disgraceful, traitorous body of government on the planet, they weren't even allowed to vote on this subject of bombing Syria because you know what? The people simply don't buy it anymore. And that is the power that we have as people. No longer do we need to allow these corrupt governments to carry out policies of unending war. We don't even need to protest it. We simply need to see the truth for what it is and not give our consent. And if these prostitutes and if these traitors want to try and carry out the policies that they're carrying out with 90% disapproval ratings, let them do it, because it will be the end of them forever. The time has come for the United States and other Western governments to have representative governments that actually represent the will of the people, and the people around the world do not want war. They do not believe that bombing other nations is going to make the world a better place.
Okay, we're going to unfortunately have to end it there. Thank you very much, former U.S. Marine Ken O'Keefe there from London. And Lee Kaplin, thank you very much, investigative journalist talking to us from Berkeley. And thank you for watching another edition of The Debate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to see where this man thinks he can establish that I whipped out my apparently. Somebody wrote something like that on the internet, and you have the ignorance and stupidity to actually say it on international television. So I would now like to ask, since I actually don't have money,
Greta Berlin of the ISM actually wrote
many years.
that.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. You brought up Greta Berlin. I was going to give her, the respect of not saying that, but yes, you're right. Greta Berlin did say that.
You were a human shield.
Berlin did say that, and shame on her for doing so. And this is a perfect example. This is a perfect example of where we, the people who are supposed to be really truly okay, I'll tell you what. I did not interrupt you while you said all of the things you said both times. But you are such a disgusting individual that you're able to cite lies, and you're also incapable of listening.
You accused me.
Please,
you're an absolute man.
Go ahead.
You accused me of being. You accused me of being in the pay of the powers that be out there. I'm in nobody's pay. I'm an independent journalist. I don't get paid by Israel. I don't get paid by the United States.
You are a
I make money doing research.
And simple. You are nothing more. In fact, a prostitute on the street
want to talk about being a prostitute?
Far more
you are a human
for
shield
selling her body than you do for selling your soul. You have absolutely no honor and no integrity whatsoever. I have put my life on the line many times over with no pay whatsoever, and you have the nerve to equate me with supporting dictatorships. You, as a servant of the empire, are nothing more than a prostitute intending to maintain a system of tyranny which is violating people left, right, and center all around the world. We have been in the business of supporting dictators like Saddam Hussein and so many other tin pot dictators around the world, and all the while you've been nothing more than a mouthpiece for this system of tyranny. Shame on you, shame on all like you, all the minions, the mainstream media that have perpetuated these lies ceaselessly, and shame on Greta Berlin and others within the movement that are supposed to be helping people for spreading slanderous lies about me or anybody else. The fact is that this system is dying, and just like this agenda in Syria is not going according to plan, people like you are going to be held to account for all of the lies and the suffering that it comes directly from the lies that you have been telling for far too long. You, believe me, will pay as this world continues to move in the right direction. And the truth be told, you will be seen as not only a prostitute, but as a servant of tyranny, plain and simple. That is all you are. getting back to Syria. You know, what this man is a complete idiot, and that's all there is to it. The Al-Qaeda is nothing more than a creation of the CIA. We all know this. This isn't even debatable in intelligence circles. Al-Qaeda has been the greatest gift to this tyrannical agenda of the empire for over 12 years now. It was the gift that we could blame 9/11 on. 9/11 was clearly an inside job. Mossad was involved, and also the corrupt, treasonous leaders within the United States military, stand-down orders and whatnot. We all know the truth about 9/11, the classic false flag operation used to blame Al-Qaeda, a creation of the CIA, and instigate wars of continuing rape and plunder now of Afghanistan and Iraq. We've now plundered those two countries to the tune of 1 to 2 million dead Iraqis. 1 to 2 million dead Iraqis, hundreds of thousands, or millions of orphans and refugees, totally destroyed the countries of Afghanistan and Iraq. And now we're continuing this Al-Qaeda game, which we now know Al-Qaeda, what is Al-Qaeda? How many times have they attacked Israel? That would be a big zero. Why? Because the CIA effectively controls the idiots who claim to be fighting for Al-Qaeda. And also, we now have Al-Qaeda aligned directly with the United States empire. There's not even a debate about this now. Israel has attacked Syria. Al-Qaeda is attacking Syria. Al-Nusra Front is attacking Syria. And the U.S., if it had its way, would be attacking Syria. Because you know why? Because they're all on the same side. Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra Front, Israel, and the United States and Britain, all of them are combined. They're one and the same. They each play one certain role, but they all fight for the same agenda. And this prostitute, Kaplin, is nothing more than a mouthpiece for this agenda. And those of us who can see and actually think and have any kind of honor and integrity actually can see this game for what it is. It's only these minions that continue to spout this rubbish, and it won't be much longer before these people are thrown into the rubbish bin of history because they're nothing more than bile pours from their mouth.
Lee Kaplin, the U.S. is stuck,
I think Ken O'Keefe needs to take his meds.
Well, Lee Kaplin,
I think Ken O'Keefe needs to take his meds.
Let's stop with the character attacks, Lee Kaplin, because I'd like to get, obviously, as an investigative journalist.
Well, I mean, I've just been attacked myself. The nonsense here that 9/11 was done by the Mossad and the Israelis and all this stuff. This is the worst form of propaganda that you can put out there. This man isn't a geopolitical analyst. He is a ISM activist who runs around. He's got a teardrop tattooed under his eye, which is representative of having killed somebody or serving time in prison. He is not anybody who Press TV should be promoting as an expert on the situation in Syria or anywhere in the Middle East.
We don't promote looks on Press TV, Lee Kaplin.
Your intention is to put out conspiracy theorists.
And this debate is about Syria, and I'd like to ask you, the U.S. is stuck, isn't it? So is the U.K. Let's look at the reversal that they have had in terms of arming the insurgents. I don't know if that's for public consumption or not, but at this point, they need to make a decision. And I'm guessing
the United States has not been arming the Al-Nusra Front, and the United States has been trying to avoid to arm the Al-Nusra Front. And to suggest that they arm them simply because they are also fighting for their own agenda against Saddam Hussein, to suggest that they're allies of the United States, is ridiculous. And Al-Qaeda did the attack on 9/11 in the United States. So don't blame it on the Jews. It's a lie, and it's nonsense. And nobody takes you seriously unless it's a propagandist in that part of the world.
Okay, very well. Ken O'Keefe, you have 30 seconds in closing.
Well, thankfully, this kind of rubbish won't last much longer. We all know, those of us who've got our eyes open, that Building 7 is a smoking gun. Those buildings did not come from 19 come down from 19 hijackers. Mohammed Atta being supposedly the lead hijacker, who was snorting cocaine, going out with a stripper in Florida and drinking alcohol before he went on a jihad. What a joker you are. What an absolute joker. I feel sorry for you, in all honesty. I really do. You initiated attacks on me personally, but at the end of the day, that ain't going to make any difference at all.
Sorry,
Those
Ken
of us
O'Keefe,
who stood on the side of real truth and justice are going to be rewarded by a better world, and that's what comes down to.
From London. Thank you, Ken O'Keefe. I'm sorry I had to jump in.
So now that the Papandreou dynasty is out and the former vice president of the ECB is in as premier, does Greece now have a fighting chance in the doom and gloom of today's economic mood?
I really don't think so. I think we have to turn the clock back to the original collapse of the world economy, because this was no accident. It was a very well-planned exercise by the New World Order, who have the ability to close down any company or any country at will. And as we know, Ireland became a victim, Portugal, and now Greece and apparently Spain and Italy are likely to follow. It really doesn't matter who's in power. There are people that are controlling this situation, and we also have to understand that there's massive, could we say, massive corruption, fraud taking place, and tax evasion in most countries that are actually creating this problem.
Well,
so
very interesting.
We need to...
Yeah, this is just to quickly ask you, very interesting point of view here. Just who are these people? You're saying this could be a conspiracy behind all of this. Who's actually the people then pulling the strings behind the scenes?
Well, I don't like to use the term conspiracy because that puts you in a bracket and open to ridicule. But I'll give you an example. If you want to create a company, say an oil drilling company or a gold mine, you create a virtual company or a false company, an empty shell. You then raise capital, 6 billion or whatever, from your potential investors. And what the people don't know is at the end of that day, your capital's gone. That risk capital's gone forever, and the money is siphoned off through a multitude of entities. The banks are involved, who sometimes give unsecured loans to such projects, and of course the politicians themselves. Even our Prime Minister, David Cameron, historically was responsible for 17.8 million pounds going adrift. And this is recorded in Hansard in Parliament, and no one to this day has questioned how that came about.
Well, of course, you are questioning it now. I mean, here you are actually saying, in effect, that this is the greatest Ponzi scheme in history.
Yes.
Pulling something like this off and not being caught, many would say this is just a little too far-fetched, especially when we think about the scrutiny of the internet these days and whistleblowers. I mean, do you really believe that this sort of thing wouldn't be held to account?
Absolutely. I could show you a multitude of what we call forensic evidence. I have a colleague that works on this that is quite an expert at tracing these schemes, all the companies involved. I'll give you an example, for instance. Arlington Street, Arlington Associates, which is attached to the Ritz Hotel in London, is such a boiler room, which is a boiler room of virtual companies where vast amounts of money are invested and just disappear. Another one is the first floor of 25 Berkeley Square in the Cadbury Schweppes building, a company called Lonrho. Massive, massive corruption going on there and tax evasion. And so what happens is this becomes a toxic debt. The banks provide them with insecure loans or whatever. That turns into toxic debt, and the ordinary people in the street have to pay the ultimate price. Well, it's a scam.
Well, you come up with some very interesting, tangible examples of the financial aspects here, but what about the political ones? Surely politicians will not want to sacrifice their political careers and reputations for this. We've seen political collapse in Greece and Italy. Berlusconi losing power, perish the thought. Surely these people don't want that to happen.
You've got to understand there's a protection mechanism in place. For instance, all our reports go through the Serious Fraud Office, which is the correct place to report such scams. We've reported it to every party political leader, our local members of parliament, and then when you go through the spider's web and realise who is involved, right down to local politicians, it's on such a vast scale. You know, you can name quite a few very senior politicians and members of the House of Lords who are all implicated in this scam of being non-executive directors or silent directors of non-existent companies. And when you link that with the fraud, the billions of pounds that are going amiss every year, and the tax evasion, they're all in on it. You know, what is the point?
Well, that's the other thing. What is the point? Let's just imagine you are theoretically correct here and you give some very, very credible evidence towards your theory. But we know, of course, that economic decline leads to unsocial, I should say, to social unrest. Now, are you actually saying that what people want is a European spring identical to what we're seeing unfold in the Arab world?
Yes, I'm glad you used that term, because the Arab Spring is a perfect example of how this came about. Because remember that they can take out any country financially or militarily that they want to take out. This is a master plan of what I call the New World Order. Their priorities are, one, to secure the world's natural resources. Their second approach. Sorry, my speaker's coming out here, my earphone.
You're doing fine.
The second one is to control the markets for those resources, and thirdly is to control the gateways, the sea lanes, and the pipeline routes. When you have control of this, you basically have got the world in the palm of your hand. Whoever controls the finances of the world controls the world, and this is what we're looking at here.
One thing, Peter, I can guarantee, we'll get a lot of reaction to your point of view on this. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts. Peter Eyre, political analyst, joining us live there in Birmingham, in the UK. Fascinating. Thanks very much indeed.
And we dive back into our topic tonight. We invite an activist for civil rights. Are you there, Marvin Ugenwright?
Marv Ugenwright.
All right. Do you condone the floods of property damage and broken windows done by these thugs?
Thugs. We both know what that word replaces. Just call them niggas. That's what you really mean, ain't it?
Racist.
And can we focus on the real victims?
They were no angels. They had criminal records.
That's a red herring. Fallacious. The issue ain't whether those people were good or bad. It's whether the rule of law applies equally to white and black. And clearly it don't. In theory, Jim Crow is a bygone era, but in practice, nothing's changed in America. You see, not long ago, white mobs in the streets would lynch at least 2 of my people every week. Now a black person is killed every 2 days just by the police.
Don't lie. Those are just the deaths we report and release.
And that's not the only connection existing between lynchings and police killings. Both sit outside the rule of law. No trial or jury is ever called, and in both cases, the brutality's a public spectacle. Both are used for trivial reasons, like for stealing food or selling loose smokes to civilians. And in both cases, the killers get off scot-free. Yeah, scot-free, like Dred Scott, who was born into slavery. That's another historical parallel worth making, because alongside genocide, slavery's the foundation of this nation, trapping today's generation in a continuation of plantation living, which is really no different to prisons or concentration camps controlled by white masters and overseers. Again, what's changed? Overseer, 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 officer, 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 yeah, officer. 300 years and we still can't get these damn chains off of us. These links connect black people's present and past, like when we're trapped in the ghettos riddled with cheap crack, or deprived of educations with no job prospects, from failed schools to the streets to prison and back. You see, that's what you call a preschool to prison complex.